Padishah, the ruler of the Tajiks, has commanded his queen to deliver him a son, to be his rightful heir. He said if she does not, and she gives him a girl, a worthless daughter, he will have her put to death, and then he will execute her. The queen, in turn, bade me to find a woman as full of child as she, but who gives a baby boy. And she told me to get the boy and bring him to the palace, so that she may present the Padishah with his rightful heir. I asked her, but what of the baby girl? And she said to me, kill it. Please. Here is some money in this pouch. There's some gold here. Have mercy. I cannot kill this child. This child will die unless you take her and you raise her as your own daughter. Please, please take this child. And she laid the baby on the crib. He shook his head in horror. He held his child, but she deftly and gently took the baby boy, and she changed their swaddling clothes. She said to him, take care of the baby. The money that I left for you is enough to buy a cow that will feed the child. And please say nothing about this night to no one. Please, you must never speak about this deed, never marry. Just raise this daughter as your own. And with that, she tucked the boy under her cloak and she left the house with one final word of warning. The Padishah was overjoyed to have a boy, and he named his son Prince Dilshad. Now, the Padishah adored this boy, and he was with him as much as he could, but he was away for many weeks at a time on business, and also on his favorite holiday. His favorite activity was hawking. 15 years later, Prince Dilshad had grown to be a learned young man. He loved to read books, and he often, almost daily, went to one of the homes of one of his tutors to learn more. One day when he was coming back from one of his tutors, he walked through the public square in the village, and he joined a group of people who were admiring a golden cow. It was a statue of a cow. He came close to it, and there was a man who was dressed all in dark black robes with a black turban, and he had a thick black beard. He looked at the prince and he said, I made this cow a beauty. A beauty, isn't she? Would you like to have this beauty as a plaything for the prince? Well, the prince walked around and he indeed admired the craftsmanship. It was as big as a normal cow, and the head looked exactly like a real cow. It had the folds under the skin, and it was broad-shouldered. Even the tail was caught mid-swish. It was perfect, and it was shining gold. The prince said, how much for this cow? Oh, for you, my prince, I make good price. I am honored that you admire my craftsmanship. I won't charge you too much. The deal was made, and the soldiers took the cow up to the chambers of Prince Dilshad. He was so excited about his new cow, and he admired it that evening. He even fell asleep in front of it on many of his silk pillows. Now, when Prince Dilshad woke, a strange thing had happened. His papers were all tidied, and his books were stacked, and the rice pilaf on the table was completely finished, even though he had only eaten half. He asked his servants who had come in the night to clean his room. They said no one. Well, the next day, it happened again. Only this time, The whole room was tidied up, and he had ordered more food, and that food was half eaten. By the third night, he thought, I must solve this mystery. I will stay up all night. And in order to stay up all night, he cut his finger and rubbed salt in it to keep him awake. He lay on the couch and he feigned sleep. When the cock crowed at dawn, he lay on the couch as quiet as he could be, and he heard a soft clicking. He looked over and he saw a secret door had dropped down from the cow's stomach, and two dainty feet had dropped down from it. As he looked, he saw a young girl came out of the cow with brown, honeyed skin. She had bright brown eyes. She was about his age, and she had long, silky, obsidian black hair. He closed his eyes. He could see she was tiptoeing toward him, and he pretended to be asleep. And he quieted his breath. She peered at him, and she watched his chest rise and fall. And when she was sure that he was asleep, and only then, did she gracefully go around the room. She fluffed up the pillows. She straightened up the papers and stacked the books. She went over to the windows and shook the dust out of the heavy purple drapes in the windows. As she looked around, she was pleased, and only then did she sit at the table, and she could see that there was a feast. There were dates, and there was lentil soup and chicken tagine and some wonderful lamb meatballs. She started to nibble on the meatballs, had a couple of dates, and then Prince Dilshad couldn't contain himself any longer. He stood up, and questions just tumbled out with wonder and delight. Who are you? What is your name? Where is your family? What are you doing here? Nagina was so startled. She dropped the lamb kebabs and she fell to her knees and she bowed her head. I am Nagina. I live in the Golden Cow. But why? Said Prince Dilshad. My father, the Kimidar, has developed a potion that can turn anything invisible. He's gone on a journey to find some special herbs that he can make another potion that will render the invisible visible. And he bade me stay in the cow. You mustn't stay in that dark cow. You can't stay there. Oh no, I have no one to stay with, and it is quite comfortable. My father said, stay in the cow so that he may find me when he returns. It's not a problem. Nagina, you can stay in the cow, but I hope you'll talk to me during the day and come out and share dinner with me in the evenings. I must stay in the cow and live in there in secret. I can only come out when it's safe. Yes, I will tell no one about you. Nothing. She said, all right. And from that day, Prince Dilshad and Nagina formed a very special friendship. Being the daughter of the Kimidar, she knew many things about science. She had read many books. And like him, they talked about what they had learned. They talked about funny stories growing up. They talked and envisioned a future. They laughed together often and just enjoyed each other so much. One day, the prince returned from seeing his father, who had been back from a business trip. He stumbled into his chambers and sat down on the silk pillows. He was pale and his eyes were blank. He said nothing. My prince, what is the matter? My father has said it is time for me to marry, that I must marry Begum, my cousin, to whom I've been promised since I was a child. I told him I do not want to marry Begum. But it was no use. Nagina, I realized I never want to be parted from you. Now, unbeknownst to Prince Dilshad, one of the palace guard had been watching him and realizing he was not making his daily trips to his tutors in the village, and told the Padishah. The Padishah shook his head, and he immediately stood up and strode out of the throne room over to the wing of the palace where Prince Dilshad lived. He cracked the door to his chambers and peered in. He saw Prince Dilshad sitting on the pillows right in front of the cow. And he saw Prince Dilshad talking into the nostrils of the cow, tilting his head back and laughing. And as he listened, he heard Prince Dilshad say, "I never want to be parted from you." The Padishah knew then what had happened. There were evil spirits harbored in that cow. He must do something. And he strode into the chambers of the prince. "My son, I fear you are too much into your books. You need fresh air. You will accompany me on the hawking trip that I have planned. We will leave in the morning. Prepare yourself. It will be fun." Well, there was nothing to do. The next morning at dawn, the prince left with the Padishah and 40 servants and 40 hawks and 40 hounds. And as soon as the palace gates closed behind them, the queen called for all of the palace soldiers to come to the prince's room. She told them that they must take this cow that harbors evil spirits down to the public square, put it on a pyre, and burn it. And that's what they did. They wheeled it down to the public square. They built a pyre that was so high, and then they secured the cow. As the soldiers were preparing their torches, unbeknownst to them, an invisible creature dropped down out of the secret door under the cow's stomach and scrambled off the pyre. She watched as all the people from the village and surrounding areas came to the public square to see this unique sight. She watched as they started screaming and throwing whatever was at hand, trying to dislodge the evil spirits that resided in the cow. She watched as the red hot flames reached to the sky and the cow could no longer be seen. And she watched as the flames ebbed and the embers cooled. And soon there was nothing left but ash on the public square. A blanket of ash with one handprint, a single girl's handprint in the ashes. Everyone was gone by the evening. It was quiet. And the only thing that could be heard were the soft sobs of an invisible girl who was forlorn and brokenhearted. Nagina had to live in the marketplace. She stole a bit of fruit or snatched a bit of bread to eat. She slept under trees or under open tables. One day in the public square, she stood with others, and there was a herald from the palace. "The Padishah, the mighty ruler of the Tajiks, has a son, Prince Dilshad, who returned from the hawking trip and fell into a mysterious melancholy. He has locked himself into his chambers. He has not taken any nourishment since his return. The Padishah has decreed that anyone who can help and persuade his son to eat will get as much gold as that person himself weighs." And then he returned to the palace. Nagina thought to herself, "Oh no, if I don't do anything, Prince Dilshad will die. He'll starve to death." And she made a plan. She stole some lamb dumplings. They were their favorite. They had eaten them many times. She took her ring and she put them in one of the dumplings. It was a ring that Dilshad had admired the craftsmanship of. He would know it was hers. And she put all of the dumplings in a basket with a note, and she took it and placed it right in front of the palace gates. A palace guard found it and took it up to Dilshad's room, and he said what the note said to do. He knocked on the door and said, "Prince Dilshad, Nagina has sent you something to eat." Well, at the sound of Nagina, the prince opened the door and he looked around. He just saw the palace guard with the basket. No one else was in the hall. Confused and sad, he took the basket and closed the door and absent-mindedly was eating the lamb kebabs. The third one, he bit something hard and he found Nagina's ring. Nagina is alive, but where is she? He opened the door again and he searched the palace hallway, but she wasn't there. He closed the door, but Nagina had been able to slip in this time. And she said to him, "Prince Dilshad, do you not sense that it is I, Nagina? I'm alive." "Nagina, why can I hear you, but I cannot see you?" "Oh, I had to drink all of the invisibility potion that my father had given me to escape the golden cow which was being burned. And I've been living in the marketplace." Oh, they were like blows to Prince Dilshad. He was so ashamed. He said, "Nagina, I'm so sorry that I left you. I should never have left. And my father, I'm so angry with him. You must give me some of the invisibility potion, and then both of us can leave this place." I cannot," he heard her say. "I cannot. In my haste to escape, I drank every drop. We must stay here. We must stay here until my father, the Kimidar, comes, and then he will help us know what to do next." Well, the Padishah was overjoyed that his son was finally eating, and he gave all the gold to the unsuspecting palace guard. He decided that it is now time for the wedding preparations. He called everyone from the palace to come into the courtyard, and all of the servants came and the palace guards, and also Prince Dilshad with an invisible Nagina by his side. The Padishah stood with his queen and he said, "My son, Prince Dilshad, will be marrying soon, and all of our land, people from all over our land are invited to the grand wedding festivities. It will be a week of festivities starting tomorrow. Prince Dilshad will marry Begum." "No, I told you I do not want to marry Begum." The Padishah looked at his son. "Dilshad, stop this nonsense. I command you to marry Begum. If you are a disobedient boy, I will have the palace guard put you in the dungeon." Well, just then a palace guard came and whispered loudly into the Padishah's ear that there was a man at the gate. He was dressed all in black robes with a black turban and a big black beard. He says he wants to see the Padishah and that he created the golden cow. Nagina said, "My father!" And everyone looked for the disembodied voice that they heard, but saw nothing. Dilshad said to the palace guard, "Let him in now and bring him here." And then he looked at his father. "Father, if you do not let the Kimidar in, I will kill myself in front of all eyes that are present right here." And so the Padishah nodded. The Kimidar came in, smiling, bowing. He said, "Mighty ruler, Might I cast my eye on the golden cow? I am the one who created the cow and sold it to Prince Dilshad. So it was you who sold the cow with the evil spirits to my son. This man is a magician. Seize him, seize him. Stay your hand, please. The Kimidar said, please listen to what I have to say. 16 years ago, an old woman came to my home just after my wife had died in childbirth and given me a baby boy. The woman said that I must exchange the boy for this girl who was the Padishah and the queen's daughter and raise her as my own. The Padishah said, I never had a daughter. Girls are worthless creatures. Seize this man, seize this man. And just then, Nagina, and the Padishah said, I had that cow burned to the ground because of the evil spirits that you brought into this palace. The Kimidar stumbled backwards. No, no, what have you done? You have murdered your own daughter. Wow, Nagina saw that her father was sobbing and she put her hand on him and she said, Father, I am here. I am here. I am invisible beside you. The Kimidar heard her and slipped her a little potion, which she drank. And then, before all eyes present, the beautiful girl materialized in the public square. All of the people there, including the Padishah and the queen and the servants and the guards, they gasped as one. And again, the Padishah said, this man is trying to rob me of my son. Seize him, he is a magician, and this girl is a witch. We must burn them at the stake. The Kimidar said, wait, please. And then the Padishah just was so enraged. He kept screaming, seize them, seize them. Now the queen had fainted away. Dilshad had run over to the Kimidar and said, are you my father? And of course, Nagina and the Kimidar were holding each other and crying tears of joy. In the midst of this, all of the people started leaving from the public square. They were terrified of the rage of the Padishah and also of the fearful of the magic that they had just seen. Well, in that pandemonium and chaos, the Kimidar used the opportunity to hand each of the children, Dilshad and Nagina, a bottle of invisibility potion, which he drank himself. The three of them drank the potion and made their way to the palace gate unseen. As soon as they were away from the palace, they began to walk as fast as they could down the road farther and farther past one town after another. They went so far away that no one could possibly know they were there. It was only then, when they felt safe, that the Kimidar gave each of them the potion that would make them visible again. Now the Padishah had lost his daughter and the only son he would ever know. The Kimidar had regained his rightful son. And Nagina and Prince Dilshad could be free to marry now. Born on the same day, it was fate. And the Kimidar had many, many grandchildren, boys and girls, and each one was deeply loved. Those were his grandchildren. And the new family, they lived happily ever after. Thank you.
Woo! I'm clapping on behalf of everyone. Oh, Eleanor. Wow. Wow. you are such a master of both the technology of Zoom and like really making the most of it, isn't it? We can all like just admire and learn so much from you on that. And also just the emotion, you know, bring the expressiveness and bringing forth the emotions of the story and bringing a place very far from us with different traditions, different, you know, to alive for us. So thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me.
Wow.
Our pleasure, our pleasure. That's for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So the next storyteller we plan to hear from is Ed Silberman. And Ed, how's it going? Let's see it. We can see you. Can everything good? Ed was having
People,
some.
can you see me? People, can you see me? Well, in Eleanor's telling, I could hear Eleanor perfectly, but her image kept on freezing and unfreezing, and everyone else was either frozen or in the black. So I'm going to turn my image off because sometimes I know that helps the audio, and the audio is the only thing that really matters.
Oh, you're fine.
You're okay, Ed.
But I like that picture of me. That's my favorite picture.
Don't do that.
I'll feel better turning my image off. Look at that and admire it. It is very hard to take a picture of a harmonica player in action that doesn't make him look like he's chewing his fingers. Larry
All
Kusik
right,
took
Ed.
that picture.
So we're
All
hearing
right.
from the multi-talented musical storytelling Ed Silberman. Take it away.
The year is 1972. The place is Pennsauken, New Jersey. I am 19 years old, a senior in Pennsauken High School, and I've just been invited to a camp retreat, to a church retreat by my two friends, Howard and David. They assured me that it wouldn't be religious, that nobody was going to try and convert me. It was just a nice weekend in the country. And it was. The only people I knew there were Howard and David and Eleanor Davis, who went to my high school. But we all hit it off and we had fun. We had a tickling contest. Well, not a contest, but a wild spree. We just ran around the kitchen tickling each other after dinner. And I'm usually very ticklish. But there was one girl there, Margaret Bloom, who couldn't tickle me. Nothing she could do could make me squirm and giggle. And this frustrated her no end. I could tickle her. She really laughed a lot. The way she tickled me, you know, it really felt good. It felt like a cat's paw or a cat's tail rubbing against your face. But it didn't make me laugh. And this frustrated her endlessly. Why won't you laugh? I said, I don't know. You just don't tickle me right. But it feels good. I couldn't convince her to keep it up because it felt good, and she couldn't do it, so it made me laugh. So both of us were unsatisfied. We got together a few times after that. We went on a few dates, but it never really took off. It kind of fizzled away, the way these things do. And I thought that was the end of it. 3 months pass, and I get a telephone call from Eleanor Davis. Now, Eleanor and I never really talked. We just knew each other. Eleanor says, you know, Margaret really wants to go to your senior prom. Well, I didn't want to go to the prom. I was a hippie, at least as much as you can be when you're still living in your parents' house. But Eleanor was persuasive. I felt a little pressured, and I started to resent it, but I finally thought, she's going to get something out of this. This is going to make her happy, and it's not going to hurt me at all. So I took her to the senior prom. Late in the evening, we got away from the crowd. We found a place to be alone, and I asked her for a kiss, and she turned me down. I asked her again. Persistence pays off, sometimes, and she turned me down again. I tried to change my tack and ask her a third time, but this third time she said, you know, I think I just don't like kissing. I never have. I just don't enjoy kissing. Well, there was no sense pursuing that, and that kiss didn't really mean that much to me anyway. So my dad came and took us home. That's how much of a hippie I was. I was still depending on my parents for rides. And I thought that was the end of it. I moved to San Francisco. I was living in the Mission District. This is 15 years have passed, and I got a telephone call from a woman. The voice on the other line said, "Hello, my name is Margaret. Do you remember me? You took me to your senior prom." I said, "Yes, I remember you very well. How are you?" She said, "I'm great. Things are really going great. Do you remember at the prom you wanted to kiss me?" I said, "Yeah, I remember that." "And do you remember that I didn't want to kiss you?" I said, "Yeah, I remember that." "And do you remember that you said, maybe you're a homosexual?" And I couldn't believe my ears. "No, I don't remember that." And I think I was being entirely inappropriate. People, this was 1972, when the movement to normalize homosexuality was just in its beginning phases. A homosexual was more likely to experience fear and scorn and derision than comfort and friendliness. And here I was telling a girl 2 years younger than me, who I hardly even knew, that maybe she was one of these despised people. Where did I get the nerve? And I apologized to her in every way I knew how to, but she said, "Stop. Slow down. I need to tell you something." I went home that night and I thought about it. I went into therapy and I found out I am gay. I came out to my parents. I quit the church. And my girlfriend and I just moved into a house in Redwood City, and we owe it all to you. I couldn't believe my ears. To have that kind of effect on somebody without even trying, without even wanting to, I couldn't believe it. We got together for coffee a few days later, and we talked all night about all kinds of things. And at one point, I thought of saying, when am I going to meet her? But I didn't. And I don't know why. Maybe it was envy. Maybe it was fear of who knows what. Maybe it was stupidity. That's it. It was stupidity. That's why I didn't ask to meet her lover. And she walked away. We parted with a kiss. And that was the last time I saw her. I don't know where she is or what she's doing, but I think about her sometimes. I really do. And do you believe I told that whole story with a harmonica in my mouth? I mean, you saw it.
Okay,
Seeing
and
is
you need
believing.
please let us see you in the flesh, because we just want to look you in the heart and the eyes and say thank you so much for that story. Very moving story. There are a lot of bad things in our world right now, but some things have gotten better. Thanks for reminding me.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you.
That was lovely. Thank you.
Right.
New.
Sally, should I keep introducing, or who's introducing it?
Yes. please do.
Okay. Renu, are you? Yeah, we're ready to hear from our storyteller who wins pretty much every time she comes. She wins the prize for Came from the Furthest. Renu Narayan is far from us on the other side of the world, but have become so close to us in our hearts. And so please share one of your wonderful stories.
Thank you so much, Liz. Thank you. I'm very happy to come here and share stories. And yes, I've made many, many friends here. And it's lovely to see so many people, meet so many people from across the seas. This morning, or I should say this evening, I bring to you, can you hear me? I think my internet is pretty bad today. I'm really sorry about that. You can hear me, right?
Loud and clear.
Okay. Okay. So this story that I'm going to bring to you this morning is a folk tale from Bihar, which is on the northern part of India. So long time ago, in the capital city of Patna, there lived a cobbler called Kalia with his wife Swapan. He was a brilliant craftsman. He made the finest handcrafted shoes. And what was special about these shoes was that they had a pointy end which ended in a curve. And these shoes squeaked. And the squeaking was special because the louder the squeak, they went, the more powerful the man. There were very, very many rich and famous people living in Patna. Not everybody in Patna you see could afford shoes. But these men, they bought them. Because whenever they walked up and down the streets of Patna, everybody knew exactly who was walking by. Oh, there goes Lallubai, they would say. That's Lakhanbai, you know. Because just by hearing the squeaks, people knew who was going by. The louder the squeak, like I said, the more powerful the man. And sometimes when the men made their way home, errant children and wives would quickly come back to their places. It was almost like belling the cat. Now, there was a man called Jadubai. He was also a pretty important man. And one evening when he came home, he had a big smile on his face because there, right next to his charpoy, the 4-footed bed, a low kind of bed made of coir, was placed a pair of shoes, new shoes that he had got from Kalia. He couldn't wait to try them on. He sat down on the charpoy, picked up his cup of tea, fragrant cardamom tea, and started sipping slowly at the hot beverage. Bola, he called out to his servant, get me my betel nut box. And off went Bola. And Jadubai relaxed. Something weird happened. A strong gust of wind came. The curtains swished. Windows banged shut. The door was flung open and Bola came running out with the box in his hand. And what did he see? Jadubai was nowhere in sight. Instead, there was a blue mist-like thing hovering just above the charpoy. And as he watched, his eyes widened because the bottom part of the mist seemed to go into the pair of shoes. And the shoes started walking away. Those are Jadubai's shoes. Jadubai? Boo! And Bola fainted. Now it was evening. Kalia and his wife Swapan were sitting in their hut. They lived across the river Ganga, away from the city, in the space that was kept for all the people who worked for a living. Laborers. They were sitting in their little hut and eating that meager food, their dinner, a few grains of rice and some lentils. And Swapan said to her husband, oh, Kalia, it's the same old story. You work so hard and we have nothing to show for it. You make such wonderful shoes. Oh, those rich people, they send their servants across the river in their boats. They talk such sweet words. They get you to make those shoes and then they go away. And when we have to go knocking on the doors for the money, and what do? Fling some coins at us. What are we going to do? Tell me, Kalia. I know, Swapan, I know. I've been wanting to do something. I'm going to do something today. I'm going to do something today. That is what you say every day. What are you going to do, Kalia? I will do something today. And Kalia woke up caught up with great determination, he unhooked the lantern near the door and started walking out of the door. He started walking and walking. The lantern lit up the path just ahead of him. He walked towards a grove of huge sal trees. He knew there was a sage who lived there. Surely the sage would help him. As he kept walking, he saw a tree, and resting his back against the tree was the sage. His long beard, his long matted hair, bushy eyebrows, bare-chested, wearing just a dhoti, one knee up, one leg stretched out. Kalia, what is it? He asked as soon as he saw Kalia. Oh, Holy One, I am tired of being poor. Help me. Give me a ghost who will help me with some money. A ghost? Are you sure, Kalia? I'm very sure, Holy One. I am tired of being poor. Adio! Shouted the sage. And just like that, squeak, squeak, squeak. Huh? Those sound like Jadubai shoes? Indeed, they were Jadubai shoes. And there stood the ghost. Who are you? Bhutnath. What do you want? Hi, Ram. I want some money. Lots of it. Money. I can give you lots of money, but you have to give me lots of work. Keep giving me work. Tell me, what should I do? Do one thing. It's time to plant the mahua seeds. Why don't you plant from where the sun rises till where the sun sets? Okay, here, take this. And just out of nowhere, gave him a bag of gold coins. Kalia took it. Oh, thank you, Bhutnath. But Bhutnath had gone. Thank God. That will take him at least 6 months, by which time I'm sure Swapan will think of something else for him to do. Thank you, Holy One. And Kalia went back to his house. Oh, Swapan was very happy when she saw the gold. And they had a very nice night's sleep. But early the next morning, there was a knock. And then she woke up, went out, and there stood Bhutnath with 2 big vessels on either hand, about to throw them. Wait. What are you doing? Swapan said. By then Kalia was also out. I told you to keep giving me work. I have finished sowing the seeds. What should I do next? Tell me. Do one thing, said Swapan. Wait, harvest the seeds, turn them into wine. Holy festivities are coming up in 6 months' time. Bring the wine for us. Done. He threw a few more bags of gold and disappeared. That will take him, definitely will take him 6 months, said Swapan, smiling. Don't be too sure, said Kalia. Now he was regretting. Why had he asked the ghost for help? And sure enough, that very evening, Bhutnath was back with bottles of wine. Done. What should I do next? He asked. Kalia was frightened now. He ran to the sage and he said, Holy One, I don't want Bhutnath. Do something. I did warn you, Kalia. And then suddenly, a little puppy came walking by. a nice curly tail. Both of them looked at each other and then at the puppy. And then Kalia said, Bhutnath, straighten this puppy's tail. Done. Bhutnath, he flung a few more bags of gold at Kalia, picked up the puppy gently, went and sat under a sal tree and pulled out the puppy's tail. Zoing, let it go. Boing! It curled back again. Zoing, boing, zoing, boing. Hours went by, days went by, weeks went by, months went by. The puppy had grown into a dog and still zoing, boing, zoing, boing. A few years went by, and one night, loud knocking on Kalia's door. Kalia opened it. They were no longer living in a hut. They were now living in a nice, comfortable house. And when Kalia opened the door, there stood Bhutnath, literally in tears. Kalia, this dog's tail cannot be straightened. Please, please let me go. Oh, Bhutnath, of course you may go. Thank you for all the gold. But Bhutnath did not wait to be thanked. He disappeared in a shot. And that was a folk tale called the Curly Tail. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.
Oh, that was marvelous. Boing, zoing, boing, zoing, boing. I've heard other variations or different, variants of that, but never that one with the ghost. And wow, your face is so expressive. It's marvelous.
But
Absolutely.
I had to say something, the way you move your hands and your face and everything with your expressions and everything, it was very impressive, I thought. Nicely done.
Thank you.
Yes. I figure if you're one of my kids, I'm going to be in trouble because you say, okay, you better get out there and make up the bed, right?
All right. Well, actually, Pete is our next storyteller. So hi, Pete. This is Pete's first time at our swap, and we're so happy to have him as a new voice. And he comes to us from the Do Tell swap in Santa Rosa, which is also on Zoom. And Vicki Ness has come to us from that swap, who some of you have seen in the last few months. And we've loved having her come visit us, and we really welcome you too. Please tell us a story, Pete.
I can see myself running around my home when I was a little kid. I'm looking for white towels and I'm running out in the front yard because I can hear that a commercial airline, in those days, they were propeller airplanes. They were flying at a low altitude. And so as I could hear the airplane running out into the field next door, I would run out into the yard and I would wave the towel because I knew that the pilot, he was looking down on the ground, and I just figured he's looking at me, there's waving at me, and all the passengers down there, and they were waving back and forth. So I just, from an early child, I was always kind of interested in aviation. And I pursued that as I went into college. I joined ROTC, and then I applied for pilot training, and I was accepted to become a jet pilot, and I was assigned to Air Force pilot in Big Spring, Texas, which is in mid-wing Texas, from a place you've never heard of. And it was a town when my wife and I moved from school over to Big Spring, Texas. There were about 6,000 people that lived in the city, small town. And we heard after a couple of months, we learned that the biggest celebration about Big Spring, Texas was it was the world's largest rattlesnake rodeo. Every year, it still is that case. And I just happened to look it up the other day. It was 30,000 people came to the rattlesnake rodeo, which I won't tell more about that. My wife and I were not too interested in that. I was very busy. I had to learn how to be a pilot. We had 3 airplanes. We went through to keep moving forward. And I finally got to the third plane I wanted to get my head on, was a supersonic jet airplane. That's what I always wanted as a child. I want to fly fast. I want to break the sound barrier. I want to do, pilots with other pilots. And it was just wonderful. And I loved that. And that's one of the reasons I was there. But when I graduated from that part, then it became time for me to pick my second airplane. And the second reason I joined the Air Force was that my second charter was I wanted to fly the world. I'd never been out of the United States. So I picked a C-141 airplane, which is an international, big, large, heavy Air Force cargo plane. And they were stationed all over the country, but I was assigned to one in Charleston, South Carolina, and we were delighted to get out of Big Spring and move to Charleston. After a few months, I'd learned how to fly that airplane. It was my first time for us to go on an international flight, so we got all the pilot and everybody on bait. The airplane's all full and ready to go, and I'm sitting in the left pilot. I'm going to fly the plane on this whole flight today, and I'm delighted about that. I'm sitting on the airplane. I'm running out on the runway. I'm texting out to the runway. I pull those big, huge 4-jet engines and these big monster, and the power you feel, that plane just jumps out of the air like you can't make. So I was just loving being a rookie pilot. Now we flew outside of Charleston about an hour and a half, and then the commander of the airplane said, "Rookie, you've got it. Wake us when we approach Anchorage Air Force Base. We're hitting the bunk." And I said, "What?" I said, "Yes, sir. Off to Anchorage, Alaska. There we go." But to myself, I said, "Oh my God, no one ever told me that I was going to be the only pilot awake on this first international flight. No one ever told me that. These guys are in the bed. Oh my God." So anyhow, there we go. Off to Anchorage, Alaska. As we fly across the United States, flying across the states was easy because it's kind of like flying on the runways. I mean, it's like a runway. It's what I'm trying to say. Interstate, it's like easy to fly all across the United States. But when you get to when you get to Canada, on the plane with me, the navigator on board with me had never been on an international flight either. So he and I were both complete rookies, and we're flying now into Canada airspace, and it is a big difference from flying in that country. There was no big cities we could identify. The ground, the signals on the ground gave us these different signals that were far apart, and it didn't make a lot of sense to us. There was no GPS in those days. There was no laptop. We were flying in those days with a piece of charts and rooks and paper that we navigated for the next 6 all the way to Anchorage. So flying across using those charts, after a while, I started feeling the responsibility myself as in charge of this aircraft and all these people. There's 50 people on board in this massive airplane, and I'm in this dark spot, and I'm starting to worry about the responsibility, the safety of all of those people. Like, this is a huge responsibility. So I start having this awful dilemma between myself. Is the captain's asleep? Should I go wake him up and say, "Hey, I'm not sure. I mean, there's a lot of people at life here. Should we do this? It's dark. We're not sure." I didn't want to say anything to the navigator because I don't want to freak him out. So we'll just keep going. And I'm flying along, and I think about this dilemma, the hardest of my life. And I finally decide, after an hour or two, no, I'm not going to wake the captain. We're just going to keep going. We're going to go. And so we kept going and kept going. The sun came up about that time, and the sun came up behind us on the east course, and we're flying east or west, and we see the sun behind us. And after an hour or so, we start seeing this orange flash. There's this flashlight I'd never seen before. I had no idea what it was, so I didn't pay any attention. And then a little bit longer, there's another flash, orange light. I had no idea what it was. Never seen anything like that. And a little bit more signal. And then a little bit later, we saw the Northern Lights out there. And it was just really weird. Now, the cockpit on the cabin was green, and we started seeing these orange lights. And I thought maybe it was a signal in the back of the cabin. Or at one point, my imagination said, maybe that's the Russians telling us we're getting too close to their airspace. Like, oh my God, my imagination is going crazy. And this orange light, it keeps getting lighter and lighter. I'm sorry, bigger and bigger and more frequent. And so finally, as we keep going and going and going, we look and we see that this orange light that we see, we're close enough to see that it is actually the reflection of the sun off of the office glass building on the way into Anchorage. So we're reflecting the light off of a glass office building. And we said, oh my God, we're so relieved. I land the plane. I never said anything to the pilot about being my worries. And the whole story is we were on track the whole time. But those 6 hours were the most harrowing flight of my life. Thank you.
Yay. It's kind of harrowing for us too.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All true and very, 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 a real, very rookie flight.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Pete.
Thank you.
So
Thank
good
you. I
to have
appreciate
you
you
and
having me
hope
here.
you
Thank you
come
very much.
again. Yeah, we'd love to have you come again.
Yeah, we got some more. We like these
Good.
personal kind of stories.
We don't know how much longer we'll be on Zoom yet, but it makes it real easy for those of us who live in different places. Speaking of which, I just, I was called away a little bit before Pete's story, and I think Renu is already off. She sometimes has to do that, because it's kind of time to get breakfast together and things like for her family. But one teller who we've also been enjoying from Troy, New York, Bev Schwartz, couldn't come today because she had oral surgery. And we knew that. I mean, she let me know that, but I just got a message that she actually fell after the oral surgery, and now she's in the hospital actually. And she didn't have Renu's contact information, but she was going to be performing for Renu at her program that she does on Zoom from India. But so I will, please keep her in your thoughts, and I'll send her, anybody who wants her email, I can give it to you. I can put it in I'll find it and put it in the chat. Okay. I'm sure she'd really, really appreciate hearing from people. And this is life, ups and downs. And
Where?
But we have another wonderful storyteller, and that is our amazing tech host for tonight. And she's going to spotlight herself, I guess, Claire Castell. And tell us a story, Claire. I think this is a new one you said you've been working on.
No sound.
Yeah, okay. My picture has gone totally bad here, but we'll at least it'll be a little bit better than Ed, who had to black out entirely. Well, back in the 80s, I lived a double life. I was in my 30s. And by day, I'd put on my little Diane Feinstein suits with the bow, and the pencil skirt. And I would drive into Silicon Valley and work. I worked at some of the largest firms there, and I led programming conferences, as well as in the Bay Area, as well as national conferences. At the end of the day, I would drive home to my home in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and I'd put on my overalls, go out and chop some wood for the stove. And Saturday night, I'd drive to the big Contra dance at Stanford with my dance shoes on and my big hippie twirling skirt. And this half of me was what really made me feel whole. Now, I met Paul one night at a Stanford dance, whirling around in a waltz. Oh my goodness. And Paul was tall and blonde, like a big sturdy Swede. He had a beautiful baritone voice, and he was a good dancer. And we got to talking about a dance camp called Lark in the Morning that was coming up. And I really wanted to go, but I needed a roommate. And on a whim, I asked him if he wanted to go with me as my roommate. He said, sure, let's do it. Now, I knew it was a little risky because we just met and he was a complete stranger, but I really wanted to go. Now we get on the drive to Mendocino and he pulls off the highway toward the forest. I'm going, oh God, what is this? No, I want to show you this beautiful pygmy forest. And he did. And I loved it. I discovered Paul was working for the Forestry Service since he graduated from Berkeley. And he was a really smart man. And I love nature. So that was just amazing. So we get to the camp and we share a cabin and we throw our one sleeping bag over here and one sleeping bag over there because, you know, we just met basically. And we went to the hall, the dance hall, and we just danced our feet bloody. And some of you out there knows what that feels like. It was wonderful that whole week. And Paul was a complete gentleman. And each night it seemed like our sleeping bags kind of crept closer and closer to each other as we did get to know each other. It was a wonderful week. And after the camp was over, Paul and I dated. And we danced back in the Bay Area. We went to Renaissance Fair together and we waltzed to fiddlers on the street. And he was such a great man. And we had so much in common. He was one of the best men I ever met, a really good human, you know. But back at work, another man, Jim, was captivating my attention. We were working on a technical, thorny project. Jim, he had dark, curly hair and he had these chiseled cheekbones, and he wanted more and more of my time as we dated a little bit. And he was really going for the gusto. When we get married, we can buy a new house and a car and computers. You know, this was really rushing it. This is like 3 months, but it was seductive. I did want to get remarried at that time. And he wanted me to be exclusive. And I asked me to break up with Paul. And I hated doing that because Paul represented a part of my life that, you know, was making me human. And Jim was the establishment. Jim didn't like me dancing at the Ren Fair or anywhere, but he professed his vast love for me and asked to move in with me at my house. Well, you know, my lesson learned was when people fall in love quickly, they also can fall out of love quickly. So in another month or two, Jim realized that this hippie chick dancer was just too far out for him and moved out. And by then I'd fallen for him, hook, line, you know, everything. I was gone, and now I was shattered. And not only that, is I had to watch at work, that we worked at the same company. I watched as he dated a secretary there who we later married. Oh, so by the time I could really face the world again, Paul was dating another woman who he later married, and there's really no going back there. That was really one of the biggest regret of my romantic life, but things moved on. So 20 years later, I went to a harvest festival in San Francisco where my musician boyfriend was performing. And in the audience, I heard Paul's beautiful baritone voice. Claire, Claire. Sorry, I don't do baritone well. And I looked around and I recognized him and I couldn't see him. Claire, it's me. You probably don't recognize me. There were people in front of me and there was this big guy in front of me. And I really couldn't see him. It's me. And that large man who was like 300 pounds now was Paul. And of course, once we started talking, we connected. Oh, it's so good to see you, Paul. And regrettably, Paul was still married. But I said to myself, I don't care what he looks like. If he were single, I'd still go for him in a heartbeat. I have never met a finer person than Paul. He was the half that would make me feel whole. He was the road I should have taken. Thank you.
Oh, oh.
Life goes on. All right, now I have to go back and do the spotlighting thing.
All right, well, you should spotlight Sally.
Okay.
We're at the end of it. What a wonderful story. Thank you for that.
Sally.
That was
There we go.
All right. Okay. Well, what a wonderful, wonderful evening. Thank you, all the tellers. Thank you so much for sharing your stories and your talent. And what a wonderful night to listen and just appreciate it so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Liz, are you going to tell or shall I finish
No,
out?
I'm not. I think we've had, maybe people want to chat, but if you have a story, we always want to hear your story, Sally, if you have one.
All right, I have a little story because a neighbor left a bag of lemons on my doorstep the other day and reminded me of a time, when I was living in Southern California. I was living in a neighborhood that had wonderful lemon trees. And not too far down from me, there was this huge lemon tree. The lemons hung like Christmas ornaments all over the tree. And the smell of the lemon blossoms was just overpowering. And one morning I was walking my dog and I took a whiff and oh my goodness. And suddenly in front of my vision came my mother's lemon meringue pie, a pie with a crust that was so flaky. The lemon custard was so sweet and sour, and on top meringue lightly tinged brown. I got home about 8:30 after walking the dog, and I said to myself, I have to have a piece of pie. I have to have a piece of pie right now. And so I got my keys and I'm out the door, and my husband says, where in the hell are you going? I said, I'm going to Denny's. I have to have a piece of pie. And so I went to Denny's and sat at the counter. They have the display. You remember the display where the desserts went round and round. And here was this piece of pie going round and round. And I said to the waitress, I know just what I want. Don't bring me a menu. Give me a cup of coffee and that piece of pie. She placed it in front of me and I took my fork and I cut into it. And the crust seemed kind of hard. And I got to the lemon center and it was sort of like shaky, like it was jello. And when I picked the fork up to my mouth, the whole piece of meringue came out too, and it looked like an old deflated balloon. Well, I was paying $3.50 for it, so I finished it. And when I got home, I thought to myself, I know what I'll do. And I took out the cookbook that my mother gave me with her favorite recipes. And in her own handwriting was the recipe for the lemon meringue pie. Now, I am a Southern girl and I know how to make a pie. Thank you very much. And so I made my pie crust with Crisco. And then I in the double boiler, I made the cream for the lemon cream part. And I took the eggs and I broke them ahead of time so that the whites would get warm. And I got wonderful peaks and I put that into the lemon meringue. And anyway, I put the pie in the oven, and when it was done, I put the meringue and let it brown until it was just right. And I had this gorgeous pie, and I put it on the counter to let it cool. And it was getting near lunchtime, and I knew my husband would pretty soon want lunch. And I thought to myself, well, I know what I'll have for lunch. And I set the table with the glass dessert plates and sterling silver forks and the teacup. And my husband came to the table and he said, what are we having for lunch? And I said, oh, you're going to be so pleased. And I brought this pie to the table and I cut it in fourths. And I gave him a fourth of the pie, and I gave myself a fourth of the pie. And I said, you just taste this. And he said, where's lunch? And I said, you're looking at lunch. He said, what kind of lunch is that? I said, just taste it. He said, what kind of lunch is this? And I said, it's just delicious and you'll love it. And that's the time we had lemon pie for lunch. And with that little tidbit, I bid you adieu and hope that all your days will be delicious. Bye-bye. Don't forget to come back next week. Don't forget to come back
Thank
next month.
you. Yeah, thank you, Eleanor, our featured teller, and thank you to all the rest of our wonderful tellers. What a special evening.
And Liz, aren't you telling soon
On
on the moth? Aren't you doing the
yeah,
moth?
I'll talk to you about that later.
Oh, okay. All righty. Good night then.
Okay. All right.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you. This was
This
lovely.
was such